Let's go. Once we bring an end to the chaos, this land will be ours.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Not Out channel. Welcome back to the series where we're counting down the top Dynasty Warriors characters as of the latest game. Coming in at number 7, we have the Hero of Chaos, one of the biggest figures within this game, one of the most notable and popular characters within this game, Cao Cao. Cao Cao was the Chancellor of the Han Dynasty who laid the foundations for the future kingdom of Wei. He was a clean-cut, tall, and crafty individual, and he excelled in war and politics. He was loved and feared for his perceptiveness and swift retaliations, as well as his close relationship with many of his retainers. Chen Shou has commented that he was a leader who possessed a unique mindset and was a timeless hero. Roman to the Three Kingdoms famously villainizes him to be a hot-blooded, sly, yet occasionally dumbfounded schemer who sometimes survived his hardships on luck alone. His legitimate successor is Cao Pi, and Xiahou Dun, Xiahou Yuan, Cao Ren, and Cao Hong are his well-known cousins. Before we jump into how Cao Cao, the Hero of Chaos, has changed within the Dynasty Warriors series since its playable debut back in the very first Dynasty Warriors game, an original character of the series, an OG character, very big name within Chinese history. Let's take a look at the popularity polls to see why Cao Cao is all the way up here at number 7. In the first popularity poll, consisting of about 75,000 total votes, we have Cao Cao ringing in the top 10 at number 8 with 1,815 of those votes. In the second popularity poll, he's going to drop down to the 15th position, and then in my personal ranking, he's going to drop down to the 17th position. So Cao Cao, relative to all those lists, is pretty high up on the list, and it should be so because Cao Cao is one of the most instrumental characters within this series. For me personally, Cao Cao has never been like a favorite of mine. I've always admired his passion and his ambition and relentlessness to get towards his goal. That's where I really connect with the character because I'm very similar in that manner. Where I fall short with the character is definitely like his weapon style, because for me personally, regular swords is just not something that's very captivating. Cao Cao definitely gets some cool moves later on, and we'll talk more about that in his weapon style section. But for me, Cao Cao has never been a character that I would want to play right away. He's always interesting to watch though. I always love to see his story, how he interacts with people, how his story goes, and even with the games adding on new battles and how Cao Cao reacts to that, it's always been cool to see how Cao Cao's story unfolds. But with that being said, we have a lot to cover with Cao Cao. We're gonna go ahead and jump right into it. This might be a little longer than some of my other videos, and if you're gonna watch the cutscenes within the description for Cao Cao, be prepared for a very, very long video because Cao Cao has a lot of content revolved around him. But with that being said, we're gonna jump into who Cao Cao is for people who don't know, and then we'll talk about all of his changes within the game. So Cao Cao was a cunning yet feared man. He was relentless in his desire to end the land's chaos, and he would use any means necessary to achieve his plans, even if it means he becomes an enemy to other kingdoms or to the Han Empire. However, he also has a fierce temper and will often scold his men's incompetence if the battle goes badly for him. And he's very serious about ruling the land for the sake of stability, justice, and order, and he cared little about status or olden traditions, and he judged men solely based on their achievements and skill. This is a personality trait of Cao Cao that's very intriguing because he'll recruit people based on talent alone, not on the results or damage that they do to Cao Cao's forces. For example, with the Battle of One Castle, which we'll go into deeper with Jia Shu, he recruits him even though the damage that Jia Shu causes to his forces, he ends up recruiting him anyway because he recognizes the talent. And on the flip side, with a character like Zhu Shu, Cao Cao has no interest in recruiting a character like Zhu Shu because Zhu Shu has no ambition for really anything. But Cao Cao had a lot of good relationships within the game. He treasured his retainers very much and he treated them very generously. He was particularly close to Xiahou Dun as they seemed to instinctively understand one another. And he was also very close to Dian Wei and Guo Jia, who he saw as a trusted bodyguard and right hand, and then somebody who was a very trusted tactical advisor, respectively. We'll dive deeper into all of his relationships towards the end of the video because he has a lot of them. So Cao Cao at times was portrayed as this merciless, relentless, ambitious character, but he also had these moments of benevolence and understanding when it came to ruling and creating a kingdom. And that balance within itself is a very interesting thing to see within Cao Cao. There are moments when you can see he's actually being human. I would argue to say that they're mostly Cao Cao is putting on a front, or he's very stone-faced that potentially do bother him, like the death of Dian Wei or the death of Xiahou Yuan. These people dying very close to him. In some games, he doesn't really show any emotion at all, and he just says, and it's almost like a front to just move forward and help, his kingdom move forward. But he does have moments within the game where he goes back to those moments and you can see him being a little human and almost emotional at times. But I can't say enough good things about Cao Cao. He's a very interesting character. For me personally, he was just a little lower because I just particularly don't like his weapon style. It's not a weapon that I would jump to play, but everything else about the character is really, really good. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into how Cao Cao has changed within the series. But starting off with Cao Cao's appearance. So Cao Cao's appearance within most of the games is actually pretty good. He's one of the few characters that has a consistent look that he maintains throughout all of the games. And I think anyone that's a big fan of Cao Cao in the beginning or whenever they picked up the game and decided that Cao Cao was one of their favorites, they would like him in any instance regarding his appearance. I think generally he looks pretty good in all the games. He maintains a very similar look throughout all the games. He has this commanding look about him, and I think he looks really good as a character appearance-wise. I don't really have much to complain about. Now moving on to his weapon style. So his weapon style within all the games remains the exact same. He does not change, and that's basically the sword. And that's why, I just don't particularly like the sword. It's an okay weapon for me. Nothing too crazy. The best thing about the weapon is probably the Musou attacks in the later games. The earlier ones was fine. It was, very basic Musou attack, nothing crazy, very simple. It ends with a very wide AoE, which I did not mind at all. The Musou attacks in the later games and like the EX attacks, all the ice imbued that he gets later on is pretty cool. Other than that, the weapon style is it's nothing too exciting personally for me. Things that I really like about the character is definitely his personality and the way he interacts with certain people. Just seeing his ambition come to life or whatever he does in order to get to the next step. That's always interesting for me to watch with Cao Cao, but it never makes me want to play as him. It makes me want to play for him. Like I would love to be under Cao Cao and be on his team, but it's not something that I would jump to play just on his weapon style alone. But for the most part, I thought his weapon style was relatively okay. It fits him as a character. It's very fitting for Cao Cao. For me personally, it's not a weapon that I would run to play as, but it's a good weapon for Cao Cao and it fits him really well as a character. So not much to complain about there. Now, moving on to his voice acting. Now, Cao Cao has one of the most interesting and unique voices within the game. Very commanding presence that comes out of this guy. And I have to put a lot of respect into the voice acting for Cao Cao because it's one of the best within the game. In Dynasty Warriors 3, he had a good voice actor.
Zhuge Liang, Zhou Yu, your fate must end here.
Dynasty Warriors 4, he gets a different one.
We will attack Yuan Shao.
Which was okay. Wasn't too bad or anything like that. But Dynasty Warriors 5 through 8, he gets the same one. But I thought it was a different person because if you listen to Dynasty Warriors 5...
It almost looked like you wanted to kill Guan Yu.
And then you listen to the change or the way he sounds in Dynasty Warriors 8.
Of all the stars that shone in the chaos, you and I remain to the last.
Completely different. I thought it was a different person, but for me, Dynasty Warriors 8 was the best voice acting for Cao Cao. It just had that, again, commanding, compelling, aura and vibe that Cao Cao was able to give off with his voice acting. He was just a very well-spoken character, and the voice acting that carried through for him just fit so perfectly. The earlier games, Dynasty Warriors 5 and 6 and 7, was also really good as well, but I don't know, something about Dynasty Warriors 8, man, it just came out differently. It just made you pay attention to what he was saying because the voice acting was so captivating. And then in Dynasty Warriors 9, it was actually pretty good as well.
I will ask you one last time, what exactly are you?
It wasn't as good as the previous game, but it was still pretty good in Dynasty Warriors 9. You play through Dynasty Warriors so much, you're just going to hear Cao Cao's voice over and over again, so it's going to grow on you regardless if you like it or not. But I thought it was pretty good for Dynasty Warriors 9. I thought it fit him as a character. It really solidified who Cao Cao was as a character and I think the voice acting is one of the best for him. Can't complain too much about it. Now, moving on to his significant battles, his relationship, and his death. He's got a lot of significant battles. I'll try to do this as best as I can, but this is probably going to be the bulkiest part of the video. Let's start out with the two most basic battles for Cao Cao and most of the characters in the game. We have the Yellow Turban Rebellion and the Battle of Hulao Gate. So these two battles are very important for Cao Cao. Yellow Turban Rebellion, it's like his first chance. He raises an army. It's him, Xiahou Dun, Xiahou Yuan. Very beginning of Cao Cao's story and the Kingdom of Wei. Cao Cao really putting a staple on who he is as a character and really making a name for himself at that point because of what he was able to achieve during that battle. Then moving on to the Battle of Hulao Gate, very important battle as well because again he's establishing himself as a warlord, as the magnanimous ability that Cao Cao has as a leader. It's starting to really attract certain people and people are starting to take notice of that. And it also kind of leads into the next battle, which is the assassination attempt for Dong Zhuo. Now I don't think it was noted within history. I don't think Cao Cao actually tried to do this, but within the games there is a stage in some of, like mostly the later games, where you try to assassinate Dong Zhuo and it always ends up in failure as Lu Bu shows up, chases you out of the building. But yeah, very important battles for him, and those two battles really set up the foundation for the Wei Kingdom. Now moving on to the Battle of Wan Castle, extremely important battle for Cao Cao. He gets invited by Zhang Zhou into a castle where, he's feigning surrender, launches the ambush on Cao Cao during the middle of the night, and Cao Cao is there with Dian Wei. And they end up killing a lot of Cao Cao's forces, but Cao Cao is able to escape because Dian Wei is able to protect him as Cao Cao is fleeing. In most of the games, there is a cutscene or event around Dian Wei saving Cao Cao at this battle, and it's very important because if Cao Cao obviously gets killed here, his story comes to an end. The Wei Kingdom doesn't exist, and the Three Kingdoms period probably doesn't exist either. But it's a very big event for Cao Cao because he loses one of the most important people to him. So the Battle of Wan Castle happens, Dian Wei gets killed, they go back to attack the castle, they take it down, and they capture Jia Shu alive, where he ends up recruiting him within the game, and Jia Shu becomes a part of Cao Cao's forces because, again, even though Cao Cao was very deeply upset about the loss of Dian Wei, he still had to commend Jia Shu's strategy for being able to take down Dian Wei and forcing Cao Cao to flee, which leads to the next battle of Jia Pi. So the Battle of Jia Pi is between Cao Cao and Lu Bu, very important battle for Cao Cao because this is the battle where one of the greatest warriors within the land falls to Cao Cao. So Lu Bu's holed up in Jia Pi Castle, he's not moving, Cao Cao floods the castle, people begin defecting and leaving, and Lu Bu's forces are dwindling down to a meager few, and then he tries to leave and break out. Cao Cao captures him and ends up executing him. He also captures Zhang Liao. He ends up recruiting Zhang Liao. Again, Cao Cao sees the talent of this character. Again, ends up recruiting him because he notices the talent that this character has, also paired with his humility and honor, which allowed him to bring him in even though he was a part of Lu Bu's forces. Alright, moving on to the Battle of Guandu, one of the biggest battles for Cao Cao. He's going against an old friend in Yuan Shao, and he was heavily outnumbered in this battle, and it was looking pretty bad for Cao Cao. However, within the games, when you take down the Wu Chao supply depot, you turn the battle into your favor, and Cao Cao was able to easily beat Yuan Shao, resulting in a decisive victory and significantly increasing Cao Cao's forces and territory. As he defeats Yuan Shao passes away, and then he takes the remaining northern territories that Yuan Shao's successors were occupying, takes them down, basically secured the northern part of China, making Cao Cao the largest force in China at this point. Very important battle for Cao Cao. People are really starting to take notice of him now, and at this point, Cao Cao is the closest to uniting the land under his name. Now moving on to the Battle of Changban. This is a very important battle for Cao Cao because this is when, the rivalry between him and Liu Bei has already been ignited at this point, but at this point in time, this is when Cao Cao is really adamant on trying to get rid of him. There were times when Liu Bei was part of Cao Cao's forces. I believe Cao Cao was actually trying to get him to actually join and stay and just, help him achieve a land under his rule, but Liu Bei didn't agree with what Cao Cao wanted, so he ends up leaving, and the Battle of Changban is Liu Bei's attempt to flee to the southern part of China where Sun Quan's at in order to form an alliance to repel Cao Cao. So Cao Cao chases down Liu Bei, and he's unable to capture him. Liu Bei is able to flee and basically rendezvous with Sun Quan, leads on to the next battle at Chibi. Liu Bei, at this point in time, he wasn't a huge military force, but he was recruiting very notable characters within his army at this time. So him successfully retreating to Sun Quan, he wasn't super worried about it because of the overwhelming advantage that Cao Cao had in terms of numbers. So talking about the Battle of Chibi, this is a very, very important battle for Cao Cao, one of the most important ones within the series. If Cao Cao wins this battle, that's pretty much the end of the Three Kingdoms. I mean, Sun Quan and Liu Bei gets defeated, and then he probably goes on to capture the remaining territories pretty easily. Unfortunately, Cao Cao loses this battle, and it's one of the biggest defeats that he's ever had within his career. I don't think Cao Cao at this point has had a loss like this, and it really, really affected him. He crosses the Changjiang, he tries to get to the allied forces, Huang Gai shows up, feigns surrender, hits him with a fire attack, the entire fleet of Cao Cao gets set ablaze, and Cao Cao's forces suffer a huge, huge defeat. So Cao Cao is then forced to retreat. He's stuck in a period of stagnation for a little bit because he has to recuperate all of the forces that he lost. And because Cao Cao was so close to basically unifying China, he got so close and only to be beaten by a much smaller force, it really puts a dent, it really puts a hold on the forces of Cao Cao, as Cao Cao begins to rethink about what he should do now that he has taken a very big loss. Now moving on to his last two significant battles, I'm going to include one more. It's not significant because he's in the battle, but it's very significant to him. So those next two battles I want to talk about is the Battle of Tonggate and the Battle of Hanzhong. So the Battle of Tonggate was against the northwestern warlords Ma Chao, Pang De, Han Sui. You know, all those characters, he ends up defeating them and pacifying that region. And then he's going to move down a little lower to the Battle of Hanzhong with Zhang Lu. So after the Battle of Zhang Lu, he recruits Pang De, and then Cao Cao has to leave because I believe Sun Quan on the eastern side preparing an invasion of Hefei. So Cao Cao leaves, he leaves Xiahou Yuan behind to defend against Hanzhong. Cao Cao leaves, Liu Bei's entire army attacks Hanzhong, kills Xiahou Yuan. So he goes back to Hanzhong. As he's making his way to Hanzhong, Guan Yu advances forward and attacks Fan Castle where Cao Ren's at. Cao Cao is made aware of this and forms an alliance with Sun Quan, and then the Battle of Fan Castle results in the death of Guan Yu. Cao Cao wasn't specifically at that battle, but because of the events in the battle preceded that battle, it led to the death of Guan Yu, which was a huge blow for the Three Kingdoms. After the death of Guan Yu, I really think the Three Kingdoms changes. And because of those battles that Cao Cao previously had, the one at Hanzhong, and him going back to avenge Xiahou Yuan, and then Guan Yu makes his move, he realizes it's a great time to take him down and release that center of tension where Guan Yu was at. Very important battle, very important sequence of events for Cao Cao. I might have had the sequence a little bit off. Sometimes he gets back to Hefei, he defeats Sun Quan, and that's how he gets him to join. Regardless, Guan Yu ends up passing away, and then Cao Cao, I believe a year or so later, ends up passing away as well. So within Dynasty Wars 9, they have a really special cutscene, and then in some of the other games, they have a special cutscene where Cao Cao's older, and maybe he's ill, and just his body's just giving out. He's been doing this for a long time, and he passes on the reigns to his successor Cao Pi, and Cao Cao ends up passing away. But yeah, those are probably the most significant battles for Cao Cao. He has a ton, and we are not done just yet. We have to go through all of Cao Cao's relationships. Alright, now moving on to the last part of the video, we have Cao Cao's relationships. We're just going to go in order. We have a lot of relationships to cover, and we're going to start off with his most significant relationship, and that is with Xiahou Dun. So Xiahou Dun and Cao Cao are cousins, but they're more like brothers. I mean, Cao Cao and Xiahou Dun have an inseparable bond, and Xiahou Dun is there to assist Cao Cao in whatever he needs to do. He's always around. He's always making sure Cao Cao's okay. Not just in terms of physically in battle, making sure he's all right there, but in terms of mentally, making sure he's taking his rest. And very important relationship for him. Xiahou Dun has been there since the beginning. He probably believes the most in Cao Cao's vision than anyone else. And when it comes to implicit trust and anything of that nature, if Xiahou Dun's recommending people to him, Cao Cao will trust Xiahou Dun implicitly with no hesitation. And that's the kind of relationship that these two have. Very important relationship for Cao Cao. He's not only his cousin, his right-hand man, but I would say they're like brothers. And I would say Cao Cao really cherishes Xiahou Dun's help all the way up until Cao Cao's death. Then moving on to Xiahou Yuan. Very similar relationship like I just talked about with Xiahou Dun, but not as important because Xiahou Dun and Cao Cao seem a little bit closer than him and Xiahou Yuan. Cao Cao is still very affected when Xiahou Yuan passes away and ends up getting killed by Liu Bei's forces. But I would say he had a very close relationship with Xiahou Yuan. I would say the same implicit trust that he had in Xiahou Dun, he had it in Xiahou Yuan. They were all cousins of each other, and they had those family ties which transcended onto the battlefield. Just these three being there for each other from the beginning of Cao Cao's journey all the way up until the end. Him and Xiahou Yuan share a very special relationship because Xiahou Yuan is one of the original members who go with Cao Cao and help lay the foundations of the future Wei kingdom. Now moving on to Dian Wei. So Dian Wei was Cao Cao's bodyguard, and once Dian Wei joined Cao Cao, he realized how valuable this person was. He was absolutely ferocious on the battlefield. Nobody could really match this character. I mean, Cao Cao was even comparing him to people of legend. He really valued Dian Wei and the abilities that he had, and again, he built that implicit trust into Dian Wei almost to the same level of Xiahou Dun and Xiahou Yuan. Very close relationship with Dian Wei. He was also very upset when Dian Wei passed away, and like I already mentioned at the Battle of Wan Castle, when Dian Wei passes away, it's a pretty heart-wrenching moment, and you can really see, you know, that human side of Cao Cao come out when he loses someone like Dian Wei. I wouldn't say he's as close as Xiahou Dun just because he wasn't there from the beginning, but he definitely built that trust super quickly, and the abilities and the value that he showed that he could bring to Cao Cao really made Cao Cao cherish this character all the way up until his death. And Cao Cao said it himself, if it wasn't for Dian Wei, he would have died at the Battle of Wan Castle. Very important relationship for him there, and I've always enjoyed seeing their relationships blossom within the game. Now moving on to Zhang Liao. So Zhang Liao is a pretty important relationship for Cao Cao as well. Not as important as the first three because he was not as close to Cao Cao as the other three, but he definitely cherishes Zhang Liao in terms of his talent and skill as a warrior. At the Battle of Hefei, he relies on Zhang Liao to hold out the overwhelming advantage that the Wu forces had, and he's able to rely on Zhang Liao to get those things done. Even being recruited from, you know, Lu Bu's forces, Cao Cao is able to build that trust with Zhang Liao, and they're able to have a very genuine relationship with each other, not just based on the fact that Zhang Liao is talented, but I would say on the fact that Cao Cao actually cares about Zhang Liao and what he wants to accomplish as a warrior, and of course Zhang Liao reciprocating those feelings by doing the best he can as a warrior to help Cao Cao's vision come to light. And Cao Cao just has a lot of cool relationships where he really, you know, you can see that mutual respect that he has for the characters within his kingdom, and Zhang Liao is one of many. Now moving on to Guo Jia. This is probably the most important strategic relationship that he has within the game. This is his most trusted advisor within the game, and it's not really too evident until Guo Jia becomes a playable character, and you really see the reliability that Cao Cao has on this character. Of course, he feels devastated when he loses Guo Jia a little early because of his illness, but Guo Jia was an instrumental part to the early foundations of Cao Cao and the Wei forces because he was the one that was picking apart Yuan Shao's weaknesses, of course Lu Bu's weaknesses. Because of Guo Jia's guidance early on in Cao Cao's career, it really set up the foundation for Cao Cao to build an impressive military career for himself, and a lot of that is due to Guo Jia's influence. He was a very brilliant tactician, very brilliant advisor, and really cherished the relationship that he had with Guo Jia and the value that he was able to bring to Cao Cao's forces. Now moving on to his relationship with Zhu Zhu. So Zhu Zhu is another bodyguard for Cao Cao who almost matches Dian Wei in terms of ferociousness and, you know, being able to protect Cao Cao at whatever cost. Zhu Zhu is right up there with Dian Wei. It's not super evident within the games, like you wouldn't really know that the relationship is super there. You can definitely see the loyalty of Zhu Zhu and seeing that ferocity and the relentlessness, whatever it takes in order to protect Cao Cao, and Cao Cao does reciprocate it on certain occasions, but the relationship isn't super evident within the games, but I know he definitely cherishes Zhu Zhu because he is a very prominent character for Cao Cao, being able to protect him from the dangers. Now moving on to Jia Shu, it's a smaller relationship, but it's definitely there. He definitely relies a lot on Jia Shu after Guo Jia passes away. While Guo Jia was alive and they built that friendship with each other, he relied on both Jia Shu and Guo Jia, but I wanted to include Jia Shu because when Cao Cao recruits Jia Shu into the Wei forces, everybody dislikes his character because of what he did, but Cao Cao recognizes his talent, and of course Jia Shu proves his abilities on the battlefield by giving him tons of strategies that help Cao Cao succeed in many battles. And of course after Guo Jia passes away, Jia Shu is going to take the reins as one of the main strategists and help Cao Cao continue to propel forward. Now moving on to Zhen Yu really quickly, another small significant relationship, another strategist I want to talk about real quick. Him and Zhen Yu have a very interesting relationship because again, Zhen Yu plays a big part in Cao Cao's early rise within the kingdom. Of course there is a bit of a disagreement with how they view things, and that leads to Zhen Yu basically being, you know, exiled from his army. But up until that point, I would say Cao Cao really relied on Zhen Yu. So among the strategists, I would say like those are probably his most significant relationships because of course he has a relationship with all of his strategists because they're all recommending things to do. But I think Zhen Yu and then of course Jia Shu and Guo Jia are the closest to Cao Cao because they're among the earliest when it comes to joining Cao Cao and providing him with useful information to succeed in the battle. Now moving on to his relationship with Cao Pi. It's a very obvious relationship because it is his son, it's his heir to his throne, and he wants to make sure that Cao Pi is ready to take it over when Cao Cao is starting to feel the ailments within his body. Now, Cao Cao and Cao Pi have a very different vision of the land. I don't think he's particularly disappointed with that. In most games, Cao Cao usually says, you know, use the land as you see fit. I don't care what you do as long as you have an ambitious vision that you can bring to light. And Cao Cao seems rather supportive of whatever Cao Pi wants to do after Cao Cao passes away. He does the best to build a foundation of Wei and instill within Cao Pi the values and traits that he needs to succeed as a leader. I wouldn't say their relationship is like anything too close, because there are some instances within the game when, you know, Cao Pi is like, I don't even, you know, really care about Cao Cao's vision. This is my land now. I'm going to do what I need to do to make my vision come to life. I'm not saying that Cao Pi didn't respect his father or what he had accomplished up until that point, but he had the attitude of like, once he took over, it's now under, you know, his command. He's going to do what he wants to do in order to bring the land under his control. And I think Cao Cao respected that of him and just wanted him to become the best version of himself. And that's all Cao Cao really wanted before he ended up passing away. Now moving on to Cao Ren. I know he has a lot of relationships. All right, next we have Cao Ren, another family tie, another cousin of Cao Cao, and it's very important to him because this is another character that he can rely on implicitly without having to worry about betrayal or not getting things done. Cao Ren was a stalwart general in terms of defense. Whatever Cao Cao needed from Cao Ren, he was another reliable general for him, and they really built that relationship with each other. It wasn't a super close relationship like Xiahou Dun and Xiahou Yuan, but Cao Ren was still there from the beginning, helping Cao Cao whatever he needed to get to the next objective. Cao Ren was there making sure that he could do whatever he can to help his cousin move forward and bring the land under his rule. And now, moving on to his last relationship within the Wei Kingdom, we have Sima Yi. So Sima Yi is a very important relationship for him as well, because in the earlier games, they have quite a bit of a like hostile relationship. I wouldn't say Cao Cao was very aware of it, but Sima Yi was definitely more on the hostile side and then more of like, I'm going to make this land mine. However, in Dynasty Warriors 7, 8, and 9, they take more of a historical route where Sima Yi is more respectful to Cao Cao, and I would say definitely honors and doesn't mind being under Cao Cao's control because he deems Cao Cao a worthy ruler to the land during that time. And when Cao Cao passes away, you know, Sima Yi sees that same value in Cao Pi and then the successor of Cao Pi as well. So they have a very important relationship as well, because Sima Yi was pretty much in isolation up until the point where Cao Cao heard of him, he heard of his talent, he asked him to join him, and of course Sima Yi providing countless invaluable strategies to his forces. It really cemented that relationship, the bond that these two characters would have in the later games. But in the earlier games, they had quite a bit of a rocky relationship. It definitely smoothed out in the later games. I like the relationship in the later games. I like that Sima Yi acknowledges how Cao Cao is a worthy ruler, and, you know, his ideals and ambitions is something that Sima Yi wants to help make come true. I think it's really cool to see that Sima Yi is protecting that foundation. To me, at least, it seemed like the whole thinking of Sima Yi's coup d'etat and the rebellion and everything was to protect the legacy of Cao Cao and the people that followed him. I always thought that was really cool. I always liked seeing that in the game. Now, finally, the last few relationships is going to be outside the kingdom of Wei. We have Yuan Shao. This was Cao Cao's old friend and unfortunately one of his enemies during his path of conquest. I believe in some games and maybe in history as well, Cao Cao did have some feelings of regret having to fight his old friend, but because they had two different visions on how the land should be run, a battle between them was inevitable, and Cao Cao ends up coming out on top. I would say Cao Cao definitely respects Yuan Shao as a commander and as a person, but they do end up clashing at the Battle of Guandu, like I already mentioned, and he ends up taking down his old friend within that battle. And moving on to his relationship with Guan Yu. His relationship with Guan Yu is he definitely regards Guan Yu as a very talented individual, and the games, pretty much all the games, go over him trying to recruit Guan Yu to his side. These two have a very interesting relationship because Guan Yu is a humble and honorable person. The moment when, you know, Cao Cao loses the Battle of Chibi and he has to escape, and Guan Yu is the one that is basically letting him go and letting him live. It's really cool to see that the relationship that they developed while Guan Yu was under Cao Cao traversed to that battle and traversed into Guan Yu's honor to let Cao Cao go. I really like to see that because it's a good testament to Guan Yu's character, and it's also a good testament to their relationship within the game. Cao Cao and Guan Yu's relationship was definitely that of mutual respect. And even though Cao Cao couldn't, ever persuade Guan Yu to join his side, he was always very respectful and highly regarded Guan Yu as one of the best warriors of that time. And then finally, his relationship with Liu Bei and Zuo Si. So with Liu Bei, this is his greatest rival within the game. It's probably the greatest rivalry within the game. Liu Bei versus Cao Cao, the two heroes of the land going at it. It's a theme that's always hinted at within the game, and Cao Cao, from early on, he knew that Liu Bei had this charisma to attract people to his side. And some people saw the danger in it a lot earlier than Cao Cao. He recognized it, but he didn't think it was anything of note or anything to really worry about until the Battle of Changban happened, like I mentioned. He ends up escaping, and Liu Bei becomes one of the greatest threats to Cao Cao's existence. And these two share a pretty bitter rivalry with each other. I don't know if there's particular hatred between these two. I definitely, sense the annoyance that Cao Cao has for Liu Bei, constantly getting in the way, constantly like a thorn in his side. But I think when it comes to the talent that these two have, I think they recognize that within each other. And that's why Cao Cao was the one to say, we are the main two heroes within this land. And, eventually when it comes down to me versus you, it's going to be, whose vision is the strongest that's going to come out on top. And then finally, his relationship with Zuo Si, I just want to mention it really quickly, just because it was so prevalent in Dynasty Warriors 5, and then they brought it back in Dynasty Warriors 9. This character, Zuo Si, is not a fan of Cao Cao. In Dynasty Warriors 5, it starts out as like a curiosity thing, and then Zuo Si kind of sees how, Cao Cao's story unfolds, and then he's very against that. He joins Liu Bei's side, and he's very adamant on trying to persuade Cao Cao to basically get off of his path of ambition and just, basically call it quit. But very prevalent relationship in Dynasty Warriors 5. There's a small moment in Dynasty Warriors 9. But yeah, that's all I have for the Hero of Chaos here. I apologize for the length of the video, but he has a lot of content. I can honestly talk a long time about Cao Cao. There's a lot to discuss with him. Quite a bit of accomplishments, a very good character, and I've always liked him within the game. But like I said, his weapon style for me is not something that I would jump to play as. I always enjoy watching his story develop, how he interacts with people, if they throw in hypotheticals and he lives past the Battle of Fawn Castle, what does the land look like under Cao Cao? Always cool to see, but for me as a character, I don't want to jump to play him, but I'm more than happy to play under him or be a part of his kingdom or whatever it is. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I have for him here. Let me know what you guys think about him down below. I know he's probably one of the most iconic characters within this game, at least top 5. Cao Cao is a household name when it comes to this game, and I understand why. He's a very pivotal and instrumental character for this series, and he will always remain one of the biggest names in this game. But let me know what you guys think about him down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, definitely appreciate a like, comment, or subscribe. If you guys are going to watch the cutscenes in the description, again, it's going to be pretty long. He's got a lot of them. And that's all I have, guys, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone.